Welcome back to another episode on Oak and Rock Fatherhood. As always, I am your host, Zachary Small from thefamilyalpha.com and the fraternityofexcellence.com, joined by Anthony Bigliarino. Anthony, what's going on, brother?
Yo, what's going on, Zach? How we doing?
I'm doing very well. For anybody that's watching, the reason Anthony, you'll see the mute going off and on is because we have some audio things going on there. So Anthony has a lot to say, but if you see the mute, he'll be jumping in as quickly as he can. Today, we are joined by a special guest, Joshua Lisec. You likely know him as the number one ghost writer ever. To be determined, I guess. We can ask that. We can see what's going on there. A father, a husband, a family man, a persuasive speaker. And we're going to talk about how a man who makes a living writing and persuading, how he's leading his family within his home. Joshua, welcome to the show.
Zach, Anthony, stoked to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Very happy to have you. We were joking a little bit earlier. You're the guy. It's the best way to say it. But on this show, we want to talk about the best way to raise it. You have a son, a daughter. You're the man with quite a few words on how to properly use words. But when it comes to parenting, the words we use, Anthony and I have broken it quite a bit. That's the way you say things, what you say, how you say it. These things matter. And for someone with you, as intentional as you are with the words that you use with your writing, I wanted to know a little bit what's going on inside your brain when it comes to how you speak to your child and how you just empower them to speak and engage with the world. And specifically, we're talking persuasion, not manipulation. And there's a distinction there I think we need to make apparent to others. But before we dive into that, is there anything I did not cover?
Oh, that's about it. Our son, he's 3.5 years old. He's a lot of fun. He's a little ball of testosterone bouncing around, and that's fun. Fun for me because I get to in a lot of ways be a kid again, but also get to reparent myself. And that's what parenthood offers a lot of people, especially in our generation. I think all of us are older, maybe older millennials, mid millennials. But there's a movement, a quiet, maybe unconscious movement of reparenting that we are having to do. And as we decide how we are going to treat ourselves, it's how we're going to treat our children. And for a lot of us, it's going to be very different from how we were treated by our parents. And often parenting becomes working out the issues you have with your own parents, which you're unable to do so for whatever reason. Either you're disconnected from the parents or perhaps they passed away. To paraphrase Stefan Molyneux, don't pass your crap on to your kids. And so that is the best starting point for how I think about parenting.
Well, it's a solid piece of advice. And I do want to say, some have more to overhaul within themselves as they parent, others have less. I'm wondering, how much of you did you have to break down inside you before you really started to not pass it on to your child?
Yeah. So a lot of it comes back to this idea of manipulation. One of our mutuals, Noah Ravoy, one of the things he talks about is manipulation is a two-part process. In order to manipulate someone else, you first have to manipulate yourself. And that looks like, on a granular level, I have to make my kid do this. You have to do this, kid. So there's two things happening. There's, I need to make my kid do this. And then there is I need to make myself make my kid do this. Like you have, and then I'm speaking practically. Think about going to that doctor's appointment, for example. There's things you actually have to do, right? But then that moment of, I have to make myself do this, you are first pressuring yourself, shaming yourself, guilting yourself, pressuring some way or another. And then that just flows onto the child. And often it's because we found ourselves pressured, manipulated, coerced, forced to do things as children. And so it's like a natural, oh, this is what you do with a young child. In the same way that I was made to do this, I have to make them do this too. And it just passes on one generation to the next. Some people call this generational trauma. Religious term is generational curses. There's maybe even some epigenetics shenanigans going on with these sorts of things. But choosing to not manipulate myself into making my son do things, it is a daily choice, but it is the better choice. And I think about the martial arts studio that I've been to over the years, studying Brazilian jiu-jitsu. I guess you study it on the mat, getting taken out by someone who's more experienced, right?
I really do like how you use the term studying as in getting choked out.
Yes, having to tap out because you can't breathe and you feel like your heart's not working anymore. Those sorts of experiences. I think about the the sensei at the dojo, and I guess you could call him his assistant, but particularly his assistant, who's a purple belt. He is one of the strongest leaders I've ever seen. Of course, ironically, he's an officer in the Air Force, so he naturally has that. But a non-coercive leader, when someone was breaking a rule, needed to do something differently, it was trying to figure out a new grapple, for example, you always felt capable. You always felt like you could do it. And I never heard him correct or coerce or use. There's a fellow on Facebook that I follow. His advice is fantastic. Named Vivek Patel. One of the things he calls it is no wrongness, as in a lot of parents, even in the peaceful parenting community, will deploy wrongness. That's wrong, bad, stop. That doesn't actually teach the child why it's wrong or bad or you should stop. And so I have that experience of me being the not even white belt out on the mat learning from this purple belt guy, and the feel that I had when he was teaching me something. And that's the sort of leadership I want to bring to my son, because he never had to say, I'm in charge here, do as I say, which a lot of fathers particularly feel like they have to do. I'm in charge here, do what I say, these are the rules, those are the consequences. Spank, spank, spank.
And that was a great analogy. And we talk to a lot of dads. We have a lot of these discussions on parenting, becoming better fathers, being good leaders in the home. And there definitely seems to be a majority of the dads where they start to label their kids. They see these behaviors and they label their kids as bad or being misbehaved. And then what that does is it makes the parents angry at the child, right? So when we go through this, the child actually suppresses who they are because they just want to be accepted. They want to be loved by the parent. And I'm bringing it up because I think it's so important. It's something we miss so often, right? Alluding to what you were just saying about leadership, right? We don't have to be dominating to have our kids follow us, to be good leaders. And it's something that you talk to most men and most fathers, and it glazes right over their eye, right? Their eyes glaze over, shoots right over their head, and they can't get past it, right? They don't understand that there's an alternative way. There's some better way to raise our kids. And not just because our childhoods might have been screwed up, but because as men, right, and especially as fathers, we should be looking to pursue excellence in every area of our life, right? We should be looking to improve. So, I mean, being based on what you know about persuasion and manipulation, do you see that there's a reason why this is happening or why it's so hard for men to get past, especially fathers?
Yes, I think it goes back to the experience that many of us had when we were children. We were bad, or we were hit or beaten, or otherwise abused in some way, or yelled at. And it's, so when a child acts this way, this is what the adult does. And we played the role of the child. And it's like, okay, so when you grow up and now you're the parent and the child acts the way that you did, or something in that ballpark, how are you as a parent supposed to act? And it's a pattern, and it repeats. It's a meme almost. It's a mind virus. When the kid does this, they're bad. They get consequences, and then this thing happens, and then it's perpetuated. Right? Not a good situation. And so the idea that people have, generally speaking, about what's called peaceful parenting, they think, oh, you mean permissive parenting? The kid acts up, then there's no consequences. They can just break all the rules. Well, you can just send them out in the world, and they're going to shoot people and steal, and there's not going to be any real consequences. Good job. You've raised a child who's going to go out and shoot, steal, and kill, and all this other horrible stuff because you didn't raise them right. That's why they got to experience consequences at home. It's a tough world out there. Enforce those consequences. You break those rules, you pay. That's the real world, young man. That's the boomer vibe that many of us got. And that's why the millennials are en masse dumping the boomer parents into nursing homes, never to talk to them again because they were terrible parents. It goes back, funny enough, to advice that the boomers' parents were given en masse at the end of and immediately after World War II. There were several popular parenting books at the time that recommended strict rules, swift, brutal consequences. And as those books made their way throughout popular culture, that's how the boomers were raised by their parents. Generally speaking, not everyone had the same experience, of course, but generally speaking, we are now, the greatest generation got the terrible parenting books, and then they raised their boomers that way, and the boomers and the millennials, and then of course you got Gen X in there, and then you got a Gen Z in there. So that's roughly five generations in the modern age that have largely been experiencing manipulation in parenting. And manipulation is really, I'm going to make you do this. And there's relationship is secondary. Being able to do it yourself is secondary. Knowing the moral reason why or why not is secondary. I mentioned the Purple Belt fellow at the dojo a few minutes ago, and I said that there was something very different about the way that he parented, or that way he treated us. That made me want to parent my child this way, because there was never focus on the right way or the wrong way. It always felt motivating and encouraging, and I felt inspired to do my best. Now, obviously, he's the authority. Obviously, the parent is the authority, okay? But if you're the authority and you have to say you're the authority, you're not the authority. It's inspiration. And that's hard for people who've never experienced an authority that they had trust in, and that relationship came first. So as you were asking, Anthony, we really don't have, for a lot of us, particularly fathers now, we don't really have dynamics we can relate to in which there is a quote-unquote authority figure that we have respect for and trust in, and it's mutual, that they treat us with respect. Authority is someone that you try to, they try to make you follow the rules, and they enforce the consequences, generally speaking, and you try to find the loopholes around their rules, and you find out, okay, well, what can I get away with around the authority? And so we look at our kids, and it's like, well, look at everything they're trying to get away with, because they see you as the big scary authority who can lock them in their room, who can beat them until they bleed. That's the situation we have right here. And we can get to what the Purple Belt fellow at the dojo taught me, but I know that both of you probably have some thoughts about what we discussed so far. So we'll kind of have a little cliffhanger there. What is it that this fellow in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu taught me about parenting that I realized maps onto such diverse practices as copywriting and, as you were saying, professional persuasion?
You've got people on the edge of their seat right now, but they're not going to get the dessert just yet. We're going to string this meal on a little bit longer. Joshua, I have a question for you.
Sure.
Did you come to this conclusion through observation of other parents as you were coming up? Were you raised this way? And was your wife always on that same path as you towards how you were going to rear your children? Or is that something that you came across later in life and then you kind of came to terms with her?
I grew up in a fundamentalist, conservative, Christian, evangelical homeschool environment. The type of people in the 80s and 90s who were beholden to what's now called the Satanic Panic, where, for example, it was ungodly to have an 8-ball toy in the home, because by asking a question, you were summoning a demonic spirit inside the 8-ball. And so 8 balls are banned. Like the stereotype about the Ouija boards being able to practice divination and sorcery and whatnot, but applying that to everything. Pokemon cards, forbidden, because those are actually demons you're interacting with, and you can't have Pokemon cards because those demons can be summoned and give you STDs even if you're a virgin. That's the environment that I grew up in. And apparently many people are familiar with that. I tweeted about that a couple of days ago, and everyone raised their hands like, yeah, that was my childhood too. I thought I was the only one. That's the environment in which I grew up. So you can probably imagine what the predominant parenting mindset was. There is a verse in the Old Testament, I believe it was either the 1st or 2nd Samuel, taken out of context, of course, as a lot of things were in that community, referencing that obedience is better than sacrifice, something like that. And that was the parenting mindset, that obedience was better than sacrifice. Sacrifice being nice things you do, good things you do, even putting the relationship first, that you follow the rules or the consequences will be so awful, so painful, you'll never want to break the rules ever again. And there was a lot of parenting advice and curriculum that everyone was showing throughout the homeschool Christian community in the Midwest in the 80s and 90s that effectively entrenched most parents with the mindset that if the obedience to the rules is not immediate, enthusiastic, without question, they deserve to be spanked / hit so bad that they have blood bruises for days, so that they have that mark of shame that they will not forget how important the rules are. That's the environment in which I grew up. And as you might expect, I thought I do never want another person to have to experience that, what my brother and I did. Absolutely not. And not just us, of course, but pretty much the entire community. Of course, an anti-goal doesn't really get you to where you want to be. I thought, okay, well, this peaceful parenting thing. Well, of course I'm going to do that. Of course I'm not going to abuse my child or children. So what are you going to do? I had the anti-goal of what I was not going to do, but like, well, how do you teach how to grow up and be responsible and be independent and do things and go to the doctor's appointment and not be 5 minutes late so that the appointment gets canceled? These practical things, take care of your body, brush your teeth, those sorts of things. And so I find a lot of people who had that experience of, well, I don't want to do that, I don't want to use physical manipulation, often end up into emotional and mental manipulation. So a lot of things that peaceful parenting advocates will often talk about, from my perspective, it's unfortunate, are other ways to manipulate children, like chore charts and rewards and bribes, effectively, and what's called permissive parenting. Like, oh, you don't want to go to bed? Okay, you never have to go to bed. Ha ha ha, tee hee. And it's 11 o'clock, and now mom and dad are really, really mad, and so they're going to have a temper tantrum. They're not going to hit the child, maybe, but they're going to try. they're going to try any guilting and shaming, and if you do this, then you do this sort of coercion, and it doesn't work out really well. So a lot of people will just say, they'll give up and say peaceful parenting doesn't work. I tried that. The only way that gets them to submit is striking them.
I'm leaving that empty space because I wanted that to settle in. Let's go to Anthony.
No, man. I mean, why haven't we talked to this guy before? This is great. I'm loving it. A lot of good insight, Joshua. And it just, everything you're saying, I agree with. I keep going back to like why we dismiss the evidence, right? Why we move away from truth. And you said earlier about relearning, right? You had to relearn how to parent, and that's part of the process. And a lot of men, a lot of fathers, they resort to these ways, right? The authoritative, the physical punishment, physical abuse. Then it turns in, they might start to feel bad that they're hitting their kids so often. So then they turn to the manipulation, even the bribes, right? They start to bribe them, whatever they can do to change the behavior. And I think that's something that a lot of people miss, a lot of parents miss with peaceful parenting, right? It's not about your role as a parent, right? It's about the relationship you're building with them. And once you start to remove those things, like you said before, right? You knew what not to do. So now what are the solutions? And I think as a man, you have to have principles you live by, right? You have to have some moral compass that's guiding you to do the right thing. And if we can't honestly look at ourselves and say, well, I'm not going to manipulate my kids. Why? Because I don't allow anybody to manipulate me, right? I'm not going to physically hit them because I don't want anybody physically hitting me. And to me, it sounds so simple, but it's something, again, that we overlook, we ignore. And I would imagine there's an element of pain behind that, right? To really go back and say, well, our parents treated us this way. Why did they do it then? Right? Did they not love us, or did they not accept us? And that generational trauma continues to get passed down. And, I think if parents would just understand how impactful this is, right? What a great transition you can make once you remove those things, you start to parent peacefully. You're not only your life changes, but your whole family environment changes. And why wouldn't we keep pursuing that, right? Why wouldn't we want to just keep having that goodness and that mutual benefit, right? Where everybody feels good to belong to the family. Everybody's enjoying the time in the house. And when there are conflicts, when there are things that go wrong, we actually take the time to figure it out with, minus the manipulation, without the physical violence. And I feel like this is, if you see this show up in your home, if you start to do it, there's, it's once a mind has been expanded, it can never go back to the original state. And, it's not a question. I'm just trying to sort these ideas around in my head from what you just said. And I really don't understand why so many men miss this point, why they just can't accept it.
Well, I would say that a lot of people, it doesn't even feel like a point in the context of everyday life. It's like, well, my kid has to get up and go to school, or something bad's going to happen to me. Like there's going to be, like I have to get to work. I have to get them up. There's a lot of have tos throughout life. And again, we don't have context for what it feels like to be led by someone who has our best interest in mind, and be able to trust that love, for example, in the case of a parent, that goodness is unconditional, because so much of manipulative parenting is conditional. Do this and you're bad. Do this and you're good. Do this and mommy likes you. Do this and mom doesn't like you. Sort of an experience. Especially for men with non-manipulative parenting, it feels difficult to get our minds around because of supposed tos. Kids are supposed to act a certain way. Wives are supposed to act a certain way. You're not supposed to do that. You're supposed to do this. And there's a lot of supposed tos, these expectations that we have. You're not supposed to act like that in public. You're not supposed to, cry. You're not supposed to do this. Again, the supposed tos come from what we were taught when we were growing up during our formative years, the supposed tos and the not supposed tos. And of course, that doesn't actually persuade anyone. And this is where we go from peaceful parenting 1.0 to peaceful parenting 2.0, what I, Noah Ravoy, and others call persuasion parenting. Think about sales, advertising, marketing, copywriting, persuasion. In order to move someone to take an action, you have to offer something in exchange. An ad that says, buy this product right now, what does that make you feel? It makes you feel like, I'm never buying this. Go to your room right now is identical to buy this right now. No. The immediate response is no. Because what's happening is obviously not a mutually beneficial transaction. There is not a mutual exchange of value here. This is why so many people experience this sort of teenage rebellion. Because for the first time, the child has reached a state of semi-independence, even proto-independence, that they can breathe. And they can finally get back at all the years of what their parent has done to you. They can have a little bit of revenge. They can dish it. They can, they've been taking it for all these. Now they can dish it. They dish it out. And of course, what does the parent do? They tighten down the hatches more. They clamp down. They ground them. They use all sorts of manipulation and whatnot. And then there's the whole, well, God's going to get you. Well, your soul is at risk. And then so religions will often be used as a manipulation tool at that point. And it's that advertisement that says, buy this right now. Buy this right now, or you're going to go to hell, is effectively what that advertisement has to become. It is the opposite of persuasion. That is anti-persuasion. And so most parenting, manipulation parenting, I would say even many shades of peaceful parenting are in fact anti-persuasive parenting, because it's do this or this bad thing is going to happen. There's not any, well, here's what you want, and here's how we can help you get what we want. And that is what Mr. Purple Belt taught me at the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu dojo. He used a principle from hypnosis, which is one of the reasons I became a trained hypnotist, by the way, is pacing and leading. We all have heard of pacing and leading before in some context. It's like, oh, that's something you're supposed to do when you want to lead someone and you want to guide someone, you want to teach someone something. Well, what does that actually mean? Pacing, imagine you pacing alongside a runner. Runner's going along, da, 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 and then you come alongside them. You adjust your speed, adjust your rhythm, so that you are now pacing with this other person. And as you pace with them, if you speed up, they're going to speed up. If you slow down, they're going to slow down. You can see this phenomenon. This is biological, by the way. You can see this phenomenon with School of Fish, for example, where let's say if a few fish begin to go this way who have been pacing with the School of Fish, if they begin to go this way, after they pace for a while, they lead, the school just kind of follows naturally. No need for there to be a hierarchy, for example, of do this or this bad thing's going to happen. And that phenomenon inside of your home will change your life, change your children's lives. Pacing and leading. Good example of this. My son goes to the bathroom, doesn't want to wash his hands. In a non-peaceful parenting, a de facto parenting means you just parent the way that you were parenting. This is most people's parenting, by the way. You just this is how it's supposed to be based on what I was taught as a child. You're talking to a child. Well, if you don't wash your hands, you get spanked, timeout chair, you're going to lose, like my parents would use these like the little butterfly things. If you disobey 5 times, you get beaten, right? And so that's your second disobedience of the day. 3 more, and you're going to get it, kid. And then we have to have a talk about sin and hell and how you're headed for it, right? That is usually how that happens. So that would be how you respond to, I don't want to wash my hands. In a peaceful parenting household that still practices manipulation and coercion, you could talk about, well, wash your hands, you get a cookie. That does not help the child at all, because if it teaches them, if I do something to take care of myself, I have to eat something sweet. So now you've set your child up for diabetes. That when they take care of themselves, basic things, they feel like they have to have something sweet afterwards. Terrible, terrible idea. So when you look at the long-term consequences of bribery, it's not good. It's not good. Rather, what we want, the outcome we want, is for the child to do the thing they need to do. They need to do it. Like we're not denying reality. Got to wash your hands after going to the bathroom, okay? The question is, what makes the child feel free to do that? Pacing and leading. So pacing looks like this. But I don't want to wash my hands. By the way, this is a direct conversation from this morning with my son. I don't want to wash my hands after it goes, number 2. Okay, so what do? I say something simple. Yeah, you don't want to wash your hands. Washing your hands can suck sometimes. He's running along, I'm running up beside him, and I'm pacing with him. And like a lot of times when I go to the bathroom, I don't want to wash my hands either. Sometimes I even forget. That's kind of gross, isn't it? Got germs all over my hands. Ugh! And make this whole funny thing, he's smiling. This is pacing. Haven't done any leading yet. Don't want to just jump to, you don't want to wash your hands? Too bad, kid. Here we go. Give me your hands. Pump, 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 pump. Wash, wash, scrub, scrub, scrub. There. Next time, don't make Papa angry. This is the boomer parenting mindset that so many of us received and then we passed on. We can stop it. Go back to what I said to my kid. After I've paced with him and we've had a laugh, I simply ask him, what do you need to be able to wash your hands? This is continuing the pacing, right? This is the parenting equivalent of market research. Before you write that sales letter, you want to find out what it is that your customers want so you can write the copy to appeal to them. And this can become second nature, by the way. It sounds kind of, that sounds complex and sophisticated. Oh my God, I'm supposed to remember that. It becomes second nature. You pace for a little bit, meet them right where they're at, a little bit of empathy, and then you simply ask, what do you need to wash your hands? And then he says, I want to wash my hands in bowls. Okay, I'm getting a little wash basin. And so then we go out to the kitchen. I get some bowls, put some water in them. And then I go to the soap. So I'm leading him. He's not resisting. There's no disobedience or anything like that. There's no submission to authority that's happening here. We're doing the thing that needs to be done, but like a school of fish. He's resonating with me as we're going through this. And it's funny, it's silly. So it's easy to prioritize the relationship over what needs to get done. And so I'm respecting him by asking him what he needs. 3.5 years old. is the context here. A lot of people don't think 3-year-olds, 3.5-year-olds are worthy of respect. Every human is worthy of respect. Ironically, the pro-life community sometimes forgets that every life is worthy of respect. Coming back to the kitchen with my son, the bowls, warm water, it's out. And I would like to lead him from the thing that we're currently doing to something even more fun, because I would like him to experience an over delivery of value. Again, think that sales mindset, right? Over delivery of value. And so as I'm getting it all together, put the soap in his hands. He willingly puts his hands out. There's no grabbing of hands or forcing or anything like that. I ask him, hey, wouldn't it be funny to put the bowls over there underneath that? There's like a little storage container compartment area. Wouldn't it be funny to go into that cubby hole, and then that can be like our little secret sink, and we can pretend there's a secret sink over there in the corner? Yeah, really fun. And he's over there. And by the way, this sounds like a long, drawn-out thing that no one would have any time for with the hustle and bustle and a schedule and multiple children. Maybe a minute and a half. Contrast this minute and a half pacing and leading to having his hands washed in a way that feels good to him to a 15-minute cat fight between the parent and the child over washing the hands, which doesn't get done in a way that feels good to anyone. So the end result, the outcome was achieved. I was able to lead him to washing his hands in a way that felt good to him. That dynamic of pacing and leading, we apply to literally everything. And it's especially useful with the strong-willed child, as a lot of parenting books of the 80s and 90s wrote about. The brat, the rebellious child. You have to break them. I say like break a horse or something like that. Okay, that's a good metaphor, good analogy there. So pacing and leading is what I realized working on the mat with Mr. Purple Belt was what allowed me to be my best, perform my best as someone who is 6'3.5" and had never done anything martial arts related, extremely clumsy, related to these wiry, agile people who are able to, despite weighing half my weight, get me into submission in 2 minutes. So I knew that I had a lot to learn. And I was able to do so through Mr. Purple Belt because he paced with me and led me to change what I was doing because it was wrong. He did not say, wrong, Joshua, that's not how you're supposed to do it. Move like this. 3 points of contact. You only have 2. None of the obvious things that I was doing wrong. I obviously wasn't achieving the outcome. He was able to pace with me and lead me to change. And I realized how good that felt to have an actual leader, not an authority, but an actual leader guiding me to change. And I thought, wow, how good did it feel for my son to experience this with me, the pacing and leading. And over time, it becomes easier and easier and easier, faster and faster and faster, to go from, here's the thing we need to do, and the kid says, okay, and it's done. Because they are more important than the thing being done. Coming back to sales, as one last point before I'll pause. When you say, buy this right now in your ad, what's more important, the transaction or the customer, the person behind the purchase? The transaction is. Money is. I want your money. I want your obedience. That's what's more important to me than you. But you say to the customer, here's this thing that you want that's so valuable, that's going to help you, it's going to benefit you, it's going to give you advantages, it's going to give you leverage, and the implication is it's a lot more important than the money that's being asked for. You feel good about that purchase. You feel good about that purchase. And I want my kid to feel good about his purchases.
You said something in that when you mentioned his age. You said, what, 3.5?
Yes.
There's no age where this is happening too soon. And that's something that I want anybody listening to this to understand. This starts from birth. You know, they may not get it. They're babies. I'm not talking have a logical, long theological discussion on life and things like that and mission and purpose. What I'm saying, though, is the respect. Even though Mr. Purple Belt was clearly the leader and clearly the one with the superior set of skill sets in that arena, he was a man. And you are a man. And so the skill, everything on top of that is different. It's your skill sets are different than his. Your child's skill sets are different than yours. But your child is a human being. Son or daughter, man or woman. Don't look to them, or this is the advice that I'm constantly trying to get across. Don't look to them as a child in the sense that they are a second-class citizen, in that they are someone to be controlled, manipulated, and used. They are a future man and woman. Speak to them to that level. I speak to my children the way I speak to you men. That is how I conduct myself with them. They have that level of respect. Even though Purple Belt knew he could tie you into a pretzel, he spoke to you with that level of respect because he respected you as the person. He could help you develop those skill sets, but as you were saying, you, the person, is his investment. The skill sets will come as long as he maintains that trust. And with parents, I think that trust needs to be maintained as well. And this is where I see, that the communication is not one way. It's got to go back and forth. You need to receive it, digest it, send it back to me. Now I know you understand me. That doesn't happen when you aren't listening to your kids. And so a closing point, a final point, Josh, I would love to hear how you empower your child to let them know, I want to hear what you have to say. I want to hear your opinion. I want your feedback, even if it's not in agreement with what I would like you to do or that I would like to go and do. How do you help him find his voice? Or have you ever had the issue where he wasn't comfortable maybe saying what he wanted to say to you?
I've noticed a few situations here and there. It is largely situational. And there will be some times where he will resist doing something he needs to do, and I don't know the reason. And if I were to, like a lot of parents, railroad the child, you're going to do this no matter what because I said so and I'm the authority, ha, 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 I wouldn't learn what that reason was. And if I'm pacing with him and I'm sensing resistance to the thing that needs to get done, I'll ask about it. And if I'm pacing with him and I see it from his perspective, then I will probably guess right. And it can be sometimes that's something that's extremely, extremely silly. Like if a child resists like going number 2 in the bathroom, I don't want to poo, for example. Well, why would they not want to do that? And there was a time we had that issue, and one of the mental or emotional issues, I guess you could say, and I guessed it right, by the way, was he was afraid that he let part of himself out, it would be gone forever. We're talking about a bowel movement, obviously. But that's not what he understood. So you know what we did? We looked at videos about where poop goes, learning about wastewater treatment facilities, and it became this funny thing. We went down to the local one. Hey, look, there's where your poop goes. Wave out of your poop. Really funny thing. And so now it's funny and it's silly. And this morning, and this is months and months ago, we had that conversation about the wastewater treatment facility. This morning goes, we're flushing the toilet, and he says, my poop's going to be with all its friends now. And so this formerly scary thing that I don't want to do it, and he didn't voice the real reason, I had to kind of figure that out as I paced with him, is now something fun and enjoyable. And so often that voice, we kind of have to guess what it's saying, especially with younger children or introverted children or those who are maybe not so forthcoming. But what I'll find is even if the child says something that you don't want to hear, it still needs to be safe for them to say it. And you see it with especially teenagers and why they keep secrets and why they lie and why they try to break the rules and find the loopholes and whatnot, generally speaking, is because they've learned for 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17 years now that their parents are not safe. They're not to be trusted.
Exactly.
And so I want the exact opposite experience with my son when he's 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18 and beyond.
That's very well said. And I'm not surprised at all because you are the man who wrote The Best Way to Say It. Joshua, I want to thank you for your time for coming on here. I know you're a busy man who has a lot going on. For anybody that would like to speak to you further, maybe just to check and follow along with your message, which platforms are you most active on? Which one should they be checking out?
I cause the most trouble on Twitter.
You do. You really do.
At Joshua Lisec is where people can find me. I've recently begun posting on TikTok, of course, shorter videos, mostly writing and publishing related. But when I talk the most about parenting related stuff, it's on Instagram, but YouTube or Twitter rather, at Joshua Lisec.
I love to see it, Joshua. And, just the way that it's going on Instagram, I see a lot of the content you're putting out there, and I'm really digging the fatherhood that's dropping in there because I see a lot of your writing stuff and a lot of your copyright, and I love it, especially, from the business angle for sure. But to see you talking family, I love to see that. I love to see that spreading amongst my peers and just the men who are making an impact because a lot of people are listening to what you say and how you say it. And having men like Anthony, Noah Ravoy, he's actually coming on, I believe, tomorrow. So it's just good to be having these discussions with you guys. So again, I appreciate your time. Anthony.
Yo, yeah, no, that was great, Joshua. I think one thing that stood out to me was just when we remove those other ways to parent, right? The traditional parenting, how creative you just explained everything you do with your kid, man. That was truly amazing, right? You just told a story about literally anything, but how you gave your son power in the moment. You made it fun. And I just think about the character that's building there. Like that kid is going to be phenomenal, right? Whatever he does there's going to be an element of creativity and freedom within his mind that he's never going to lose. And I'm glad we had you on, man. It was great to hear your perspective. Thank you.
My pleasure, Anthony and Zac. And I have one closing thought for everyone that's probably on a lot of folks' minds right now. But if there's anything else before that, go ahead.
No, closing statement. Drop it.
It has to do with, I guess you could call them peaceful parenting evangelists. I've noticed this. Folks that I've talked to, seen it out on the Twitters. Sometimes when someone learns about a non-manipulative way to parent their kids, like the idea, what if you didn't have to hit your child to make them do what you needed them to do? Wow, that would be so amazing. When someone first discovers these tactics and these tools for the first time, I've noticed, and they start sharing it, it comes across like this. If you hit your kids, you're a bad father. If you hit your kids, you're a terrible person. These sorts of things, right? And that is also anti-persuasion in the same way that we use, as Vivek Patel calls it, wrongness on our children. That's the wrong thing to say, wrong thing to do. That's wrong, 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 wrong. Well, if we then turn to other parents and say, wrong, 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 that's disempowering. That's anti-persuasive. That's, you're a bad person and buy now. Click here. Not really going to get you the click. Not really going to get you the traction. So for everyone listening who's resonating with this right now, I encourage you to deploy pacing and leading with other parents. When you talk about, hey, we're trying this new thing with our child, we're getting some great results without the usual 15 minutes of back and forth and mom's having a temper tantrum and the kids having a temper tantrum and everyone's just up in arms over something that was supposed to get done 15 minutes ago and still hasn't gotten done. We found an alternative to it and it's working. And you should try, or you're a bad person. Rather than that, and they say, oh, I really wish I could do that. Yeah, you really wish you could do that. It would be really cool to try something different. Yeah, but you just don't understand my kid. Yeah, your kid's pace with the other parents rather than say, oh, if you're not a peaceful parent, you're a bad parent. I had this conversation with somebody actually, and I think they had been harassed by enough peaceful parenting evangelists already. They're like, oh, great, not another one of these yahoos. Let's go over here, close the door, and maybe they won't see me. That's that type of conversation. So I wanted to make that clear, that as we share, those listening, as we share these ideas, these tips, let us hold ourselves accountable to following our own advice as we talk to other parents. Does not make you a bad parent to have done things in the past that you no longer will do. What happens that makes you the parent you want to be is how you now respond to your children going forwards. And as that old saying goes, you learn different, you do different.
Very well said. I feel like that was a personal coaching session from you to me. So I will try to be much more peaceful and more persuasive with my approach on Twitter. I expect the invoice in my inbox at the end of this. Joshua, thank you for coming on. Great message. Obviously, that last point, specifically to me, I was like, all right, you definitely have a point there. The aim is obviously to spread this message appropriately and properly. It's not just our kids. If we really want to win it, you can't plant the flag and be ready to fight everyone while you peacefully parent your children. So I like that angle. I like it a lot, actually. To anybody listening and watching, we have links to all of Joshua's content below. I want to thank you again for spending your time with us. And again, it doesn't matter that you watch this or listen to this. It's what you do afterwards. Do you apply it? If you have any questions, our DMs are open. Emails are open. Reach out. Ask the question. We'll get it addressed. If you want something addressed live, drop the comment below and we'll dive into the topic. But more importantly, we just want you to take what we just discussed, bring it to your home, apply it. Test it. See what you can do. Start saving yourself time from arguments, conflict. A lot of the problems we see in homes is preventable. A lot of it. You can prevent the fight from ever occurring. Everybody can say nice, cool, calm, and collected. If one person's ready to put down the pitchfork, be that person. This has been another episode on Oak and Rock Fatherhood. Thank you.